Went and got the car and drove to dinner. Plus the fuel, plus the insurance. And there's high tariffs if you try to import a car. In some countries we do that. In Singapore, the way they reduce the number of cars is you need a license to bring in a car. And the license often costs much more money than the car costs. So we can change things. And why can't we do that more? But notice that the solution to the problem of too many automobiles is a political problem. So designers, you have to A, learn to work about the groups. B, understand what is in business. Because when you want to convince a business to change, to move to what we call the circular economy, so things last longer and always reuse, so we don't need new material each time. We reuse the products. Some companies already do this, by the way. But you have to understand the language of business, which is spreadsheets and money and profits and margins and costs and politics. And you may not be interested in that. Not everybody has to be. But every design group has to have somebody who does that. So when I was at Apple, not only did I worry about the products that my group was developing for the company, but I also went to Washington and I talked to Congress. And among other things, what I helped do was get the very first Wi-Fi band. Now, Wi-Fi is spectrum, electromagnetic spectrum, is very expensive today. Companies pay billions of dollars to buy spectrum so that they can give their cell service. And we wanted it to be free. We told the Federal Communications Commission we wanted to allow it to be freely used by anybody. And that's the Wi-Fi thing. And so I had to be able to convince the FCC, which meant that I went and I first of all went around Congress and talked to the Congress people and their staffs and got them interested. And second of all, I spent a lot of time learning about each of the 5 different commissioners and what they cared about. And I saw some other people give testimony at one of the hearings where they explained what they cared about. The person giving testimony explained what their concerns were. No. What I did was talk to what the concerns of each of the 5 people was about. That's much more powerful. Because we were fighting the fire department. The fire department said, no, you can't let them use that spectrum. We need it for our communication. And the phone company said, no, you can't let them have that spectrum. They just want to be able to do free phone calls. And so I explained how that it was not possible to send phone calls over Wi-Fi. Now, some of you may smile and say, was I lying? Because we do it all the time today. No, I wasn't lying. I was telling the truth. Because before I went to Washington, I had talked to all the world's experts about what was possible over Wi-Fi. And it was not possible to send voice messages. But that was in about 1994 or 1995, and it was true. Nobody thought we could do it. Today, of course, it's every day. But the point is, I had to learn how to work with the politics. Because the politicians, in the end, make the decisions. And what do politicians listen to? Some of them listen to good scientific arguments, like I was making. I also helped get the high definition television standards for them as well. in the same sort of process. They also listen to the money because they anything else. And so, what role do you have? Well, any individual doesn't make much difference. But if individuals gather together, band together, that makes a huge difference, and politicians will listen to it. So, one thing is we have to change what designers do. And that means design education must change. So, first of all, design education is all about the craft. You learn about materials, you learn about form, you learn about manufacturing methods, maybe, depending what kind of design you want to be. And I hope you learn about people, because you don't learn about business, you don't learn about ethics, you don't learn about the environment, and yet that's what we're destroying. So we need to increase our learning. And you don't learn to work with other disciplines. Sometimes you work on projects with other designers, but you should work on a project with somebody from business, from the business school, somebody from engineering, somebody from the social sciences, somebody from the humanities. You should learn to work with people from all sorts of different disciplines. We don't do that in universities. On top of that, you need to learn much more about the world. You have to learn the history. You have to learn about different cultures. How come we destroy cultures with our digital social media? How do we live with colonialists? You know, the colonialists, we'll take a look at Mexico when Spain came in and changed the lives of the indigenous tribes in Mexico and said, you must follow our religion, you must use our language, you must govern yourself the way we do. And the United States has done the same things to other countries. You must follow our economic system. You must be a democracy just like ours, because ours is so wonderful and perfect. Oh, it isn't. But why do we change? Why do we insist on changing cultures? We shouldn't. We should allow good cultures to exist. So we need to know about history, and we need to learn about the world. And STEM, we have a big emphasis on STEM education, and I think it's fundamentally wrong. Why? Well, it's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I'm very well trained. I was an engineer. I have 6 years of engineering education, a lot of mathematics, a lot of engineering. I have two engineering degrees. I went to MIT, I went to the University of Pennsylvania. So I'm an engineer. But first of all, we're a people. Don't engineers build things for people? STEM education doesn't teach you anything about people. And on top of that, you don't learn science and mathematics as one field, or engineering and mathematics as one field. They're taught by different departments who don't even talk to each other. So you learn mathematics, you don't know why you're learning it. And you learn the science, you don't know why you're learning it. And engineering in theory is about building things, but any of you who went to engineering school knows it's really about applying mathematics. So we've lost track of why we're doing education. So we teach people separately. We have silos, we call them. And for that matter, I'm in favor of cheating. What is cheating? Cheating is when you have to write an essay and you don't know how to do it, so you ask your friends and you copy material from a friend. Well, suppose you work in a company and your boss says, this AI stuff, how could we ever use it? What's good for it? Tell you what, I want you to give me a presentation next week and you let me so I can learn about it. And you say, well, gee, okay, but you don't know. But if you don't know, you're supposed to ask everybody around and find somebody else who does know and say, can I borrow your stuff? Or can I use your slides? That's in university, if you do that, because you're not supposed to, you have to lie and say it's mine. But in the company, you can say, this is what John told me, this is what Helen did, and this is what. And in my book, there's very little new in my latest book, Design for a New World. I'm sorry, for a better world. Diseño para un mundo mejor. Everything is from somebody else. And I think that's a good thing about the book, because it means it's just not me being crazy. But all the problems I talk about and all the solutions I say, here's a good solution, are done by many other people, very good people. They just aren't being used. And so what I have in the book is not new ideas, not new things, but new ways of looking at them. I present a new perspective and I put them together in a new way. And that's what you should be graded on when you borrow from everybody else, that you borrow from the right people. And if you put it together in a way that's useful. And so we should allow cheating, except we won't call it cheating, because you will give credit. When you borrow from somebody else, you say, oh, this is from, Alice's essay, and et cetera, et cetera. So we should encourage people to work together in groups, and we should encourage working on real problems, not artificial ones. Most professors have never worked in a company. How many professors are in the audience? How many of you have worked in companies? Just a few. And I don't mean your own design company. I mean a big company that's making real products. So there are a couple. Most business professors have never worked in business. And so what we teach people often is wrong. Or not wrong, it's right, but it's irrelevant. I thought, an expert in all sorts of good things. I wrote the book Design of Everyday Things without ever working in a business. And then I went to Apple. And I thought, oh, well, I'm an expert on all this material. Some of my students have worked at Apple and helped you build the first Macintosh. Well, I discovered that a lot of what I knew wasn't useful. And when people had said, oh, wonderful, let me ask you some questions, and they would ask me questions, and I would say, oh, well, those are very good questions. No, we never studied that. And so what I've learned is that people in industry are very smart, but they don't have much time, so they don't do much writing. And the people in academics are very smart, but they don't do very much. They write all the time. They give directions. And so going back and forth is very useful, because by going back and forth, I could share ideas. I could come back to the university and say, here are the problems that are really needed. You need to know the answers, and they're important problems. And you can get promoted by working on these problems and publishing your papers, but it will be very good also for the world. And then I go back to industry and say, here's some of the latest things. Because the way it works today is, I'm in the university, I develop a whole new theory, a whole new way of approaching something, and I write a paper, and the paper comes out 2 or 3 or 4 years after I've had the ideas, and then eventually it gets into the introductory textbooks, and then the students learn it in the introductory textbooks, and then a number of years later, they graduate, and they get a job in a company, and then a number of years after that, they get promoted to be a manager, and then they can apply these new ideas they learned about in the university. It's really crazy world we live in. And the world is falling apart. So, learn about the world and cambia el mundo, por favor. So, that's my message. That we are living in a world filled with problems, and we are a discipline that is wonderful at solving problems. But we have to make sure we solve it together with everybody. So again, the United Nations says there are at least 16 societal issues, and we ought to be focusing more on those. And we ought to be, even if you're working in a normal company, you can change the manufacturing methods and distribution methods, and even the packaging methods. Metal. Types of and 3D printing sensors that can measure all sorts of things about the Earth, the world, and the human body. And we're developing new methods of communication, and we're developing new ways of making batteries light and small and powerful, and motors light and small and powerful. I have a new automobile, and I think it has maybe 100, 150 motors in it, including two big ones that drive the car. And it has, I don't know how many computers in it, maybe 100 computers. And we're changing the world. We're in the middle of very, very many technical revolutions, not just artificial intelligence, but many other revolutions at the same time. Look at the new robots. Watch some of the movies about the new robots are doing. They now can walk around and carry heavy weights. For example, one of the robots in the home is called a washing machine, dishwasher especially. Dishwasher is a robot. It automatically takes care of feeding your machine, and it senses how dirty the water is, and so it changes the amount of material it uses and how long it takes depending upon how dirty the dishes are. But the hardest part about a dishwasher is loading it and unloading it and putting the dishes all back where they belong. Well, today's robots can actually just watch you do it. And by watching you do it, they can now do it your work and substitute with draw the details. The result is quick or not. So if you have it to write an essay, it often does a really bad job because it doesn't have any intelligence. It doesn't know what's important and what's not important. I did that once. I sent a paper by somebody, and I didn't feel like reading 30 pages, so I asked Chad, I said, summarize it for me in 200 words. And it did. I thought it was a pretty good summary. So I sent it to the author and said, hey, look, this is a pretty good summary. And the author said, well, it looks like a pretty good summary, but this is the most important part. And that's okay, because when you, people who hear publish, you know, writing the abstract is stuff you have to do at the end. And most people don't like it. It's like, I don't like an abstract. And most abstracts are horrible because of that. We don't tell you what you care about. So it's nice to have the machine do the abstract. Say, well, hard to friend and properly. You can emphasize the most important part. And he said, yeah, maybe I better look at that again. So, but use these things, we're going to learn a lot. And who better to tell the engineers how to design it so that it becomes a collaborator with us and not a tool. It's a tool that we can collaborate with. It should be designers. We should be not taking the stuff and complaining about it. We should be working with people building it, saying, hey, you can make it more effective for us or for these. First of all, we have do it right. Britain went to India, don't destroy your culture, and that we also know that the solution will fit the way that you work and the facilities you have. Today, design students love to go off to some small country in India or go to Indonesia or go to Africa. And they spend a couple of weeks there and they come back and they discover there's real problems. There are real problems. And they come up with brilliant solutions. And they, they put it into a design contest. But they don't. So it has to come from the about a week or two after the book was published. We need to change what we're doing. We need to change how we teach. And we need to change how we work with other people. And now, let me see. I'd love to answer questions. Thank you. Now, we only have one microphone, so if somebody wants to ask a question, we have a two microphone. So raise your hand and we'll. And we have lots of people who can translate. And I have un poco de español, so you can ask in Spanish.
Hola, buenas tardes. Don Norman, creo que en otras, bueno, he experimentado en otras partes del mundo donde el académico practica, tiene su propia, well, I would say in English, Spanish. Okay, again. He estado en otras partes del mundo donde el académico también practica, tiene su práctica profesional. ¿Cree usted que es nada más algo de esta región, Estados Unidos, México? Y si sí, ¿qué podemos hacer para cambiar eso aprendiendo de otras partes del mundo?
We need to learn from all parts of the world. But the problem is that almost all the educational systems are westernized. And I don't care whether you're most of the universities have people who have trained in Europe or the United States. And so it's a very similar system. So yes, There are many people in all across the world, many designers across the world have their own companies, but they are small companies, and they are sort of doing niche projects, and they have to do what their clients ask them to do. And so the problems I've talked about are true after a while, because, well, instead what I did was I would take pictures of the store. And obviously look at all the Japanese signs and so on. And I would say, no, it's New York. We have to get around, and we're missing the power and the strengths of other cultures that live in different ways. And I can go on and on about architecture and about building and about other things, but I won't. Other questions?
Thank you.
Here's one.
Thanks. Thanks, Sam, for the talk. It's really great. This question is focused on, we're talking about, how a lot of companies are focused on productivity and, saving money and money focus. And a lot of the times those companies outsource, pretty much hire the designers, in this case, UX designers, from other small agencies. And I encounter in my workplace that sometimes those designers receive some type of blocks. The reach is really limited when it comes to how the organization does things and manages things in the higher levels. What would be your advice for those designers that work for smaller agencies that outsource their work, but their reach and how far they can reach when it comes to the management, it's really limited.
Yep. That's what I'm saying. Why is it it's so limited? Because you are trained, we're often trained in art schools, and artists don't like management, and artists don't like business, and artists don't like politics. But we're not artists. I keep trying to explain we are not artists. Art is important. Art is very valuable, but art is all about the artist's experience and expressions, and that's really useful. I love art, but it's not design. Design is designed for other people, and you may design things you yourself don't like, but if that's what the other people want. I remember once I was a juror for an for a design contest, a big one, and there was some radio that we thought they were all ugly. Why are they doing that? Who? What? So we didn't even consider them for an award. But it was a big contest, so there were many, many different divisions of specialties and so on. And each of the jurors would be in several different specialties. And fortunately, I was in one of the other specialties that was design research. And this was the company, it was Lenovo, a Chinese company. The company there for design research, they had a project where they went out to the countryside and they worked with the people who lived there, and they determined the kinds of radios they would really like to have. And it turned out that on the product side, the radio we were looking we did exactly what we're teaching. design awards because and so the one I'm running, I don't care what the design is. I care about what they actually build and are doing, and that they have to present evidence that this is helping people. Otherwise, we don't consider it. If they send us a wonderful proposal, we reject it. I've been doing that. One who came from Tijuana. I said, it was a great concept, but now you have to actually build it. Or in a few cases, no, yes, you did everything right, but you've been in the business for 10 years, you have lots of people helping you. Sorry, it's too late. I want to support you when you're starting. But you're right, absolutely, that we have to change the education of designers, but also even existing designers. You can change. Look, when I was an engineer, I thought people were in the way. My stuff would work wonderfully if people didn't start to mess it up. So obviously I've changed, and you can learn, and good designers can be trained one way, but they'll begin to understand the importance of business and other things. And I know many such designers who are really good and have learned and have changed how they work in the world. But the profession as a whole has not. That's what I'm here to say. Cambia. Sorry. Cambia. Change is bueno.
Thank you. Hi, Don. Well, first of all, thanks for your words. I mean, it is really an inspiration for most of us. And it's regarding the artificial intelligence. I was reading this new about an artist last year in Colorado that won an art contest. I mean, assisted by an AI. It was a big controversy about that. I mean, among judges. And well, my question is the AI more a threat or an opportunity for designers?
Yes. Let me tell you a different story. Once upon a time, artists painted pictures of people and landscapes. And then photography got it. It makes the point. So I'm going to tell you about my false story about the which I made up. But Picasso said, a person's face changes from moment to moment, whether they're angry or sad or happy or delighted or just had a good meal or are sleepy. And they're always changing their personality, the way they are. So I'm going to paint a picture of a person's face where all of this is at once. And so there's all the different kinds of distortions of the face that show how a person really is over time, but it's in one painting that's fixed. The point is, invented a new kind of art, and all sorts of new sorts of artists and expressions have emerged over time. And I think that's what's going to happen with AI. We were using the tool that we could do things we couldn't otherwise do. And the painting, the prize you're talking about, the person who did it made a big point. He said, it was not AI that did it. It was not me that did it. It was a combination of the two of us, and I had to work for a week or 2 weeks or something to be able to get it to do exactly this. And so it is going to be a new tool, and it will allow us to do things we couldn't do before. But if we learn to use the tools properly, Nowadays, when you take an exam in school, you're required to bring your calculator. And I took a course on rockets when I was a student at MIT, and we get a problem to solve it. It would take us a week to solve the problem, and most everybody got it wrong. Not because we didn't understand, we did everything right except we made arithmetic mistakes, or maybe solved a calculus equation wrong. And so it took forever to do the problems. And today, you could take that equation and put it into your little calculator, and it would solve it. It will solve arithmetic, it will solve algebra, it will solve calculus. But who puts in the equation? Who thinks of what problem is to be solved? If I were taking that course today, well, the students taking that course today, that problem could be solved overnight, and they could go on to much more important and difficult issues in that same course. So, yeah, it stops you from doing this. But it is true that if you are not, some people will lose their jobs if they keep up. There's a, in American English, there's a saying about Luddites. I don't know these Spanish as well, yes, okay. The Luddites were weavers in England at the time of the Industrial Revolution in the 1700s, mid 1700s. And one of them was a man named Mudd. And he was concerned that he would lose his job as a weaver because the machines were doing it. So he and his friends all destroyed the machines. And so people said they were against technology. No, they were not. They were against losing their jobs. And the truth is they did lose their jobs. So Luddites does not refer to somebody who hates technology. Somebody who's afraid of losing their job, often correctly. But the solution is not retraining. Because often if you've done a job for 20 or 30 or 40 years, there's no way you can get retrained to do the new things that are required. But the solution is maybe to change the job. And you know, with these machines that do the weaving, I can create all sorts of new weaving patterns and weaving structures that could not be done by hand. And that's what's happened today.
At the table, and you mentioned that there aren't very many CDO companies, right? Companies with CDOs. I'd love to understand, what do you think is the fundamental key ingredient that has enabled that kind of culture? And what can we do together to solve that problem and make sure that we can enable that?
Well, it's simple. It's providing value to the company. They appreciate it often. So I have friends who work at a bank. And when they went to the bank in the commercial banking industry, they didn't, I was saying, why do you go to work for the bank? And we're creative designers. And what does the bank want with you? Well, what they did is they went out and they looked at small businesses. And they watched how small businesses worked and what they liked and what they didn't like. And the small business, one of the things that small business owners hate is keeping track of the bookkeeping, doing the daily booking. And when they close the store, they have to spend another hour or two cleaning up and keeping the records and so on. And then they have to do all sorts of files and do their income taxes and do this and that and the other. And they said, well, why don't we do that for you? And so they offer a service that take care of a lot of the things that small businesses really didn't like doing it, never thought that the bank would do it for them. And so, again, if you go and look to see what the opportunities are, that made them more valuable to the company. And so that company now does have a chief design officer in the bank. couldn't stop. So, anyway, thank you very much. But I hope that when I come back again or to the next World Design Capital in maybe in a few years, I'll see more and more people in design who are changing the world, working more on societal projects, and I've become chief design officers of large companies. Muchas gracias a todos.